election happened last night or yesterday in Alabama, and the results have infuriated Donald Trump, mostly because he decided to back the establishment candidate as opposed to the anti-establishment candidate, and now some are wondering whether or not it will hurt him politically. But the individual who did get elected for the Alabama Senate seat that has been vacated by Jeff Sessions is Roy Moore, and even though he is considered so-called anti-establishment, he's pretty terrible. Now, Roy Moore won against Luther Strange. That was the candidate that Donald Trump very publicly endorsed, and he did so on social media, although you won't find those tweets today because Trump has since deleted them. But let me give you the details of what occurred. Now, first, before the election, Donald Trump felt that maybe supporting Luther Strange wasn't a good idea. According to unnamed sources that spoke to the press, even before Strange's loss on Tuesday, Trump expressed misgivings about getting behind the candidate who he deemed too low energy. Trump fretted the endorsement made him appear weak, cowed by an establishment that he'd openly rebuffed during his own campaign. Now, keep in mind that Mitch McConnell was urging Trump to back Strange, and there were others who have been part of the GOP for a while who also encouraged Trump to do so, and it might hurt him. So Trump knew it was a mistake, but one he was willing to make because Luther was loyal, and that's according to a senior White House official who did speak to the press. Now, after the election, these sources indicated that Trump was extremely upset. He went to bed embarrassed and pissed following the election loss. Trump, multiple sources said, was furious with McConnell, with whom he has openly feuded and feels outdone by his former aide Bannon. Now, Bannon was very supportive of Roy Moore, and so there's a little bit of an issue there as well. Fingers are being pointed at Ward Baker, a McConnell strategist, and Nick Ayers, the vice president's chief of staff, both of whom were involved in pushing Trump to back Strange. So Trump did delete his tweets where he was endorsing Strange. We'll get to that in just a second, but I want to open it up to the panel.
Well, Michael, you're the political analyst for I-24.
That's right. I'm the political analyst for I-24. I don't see anything sort of course he'd be mad that he backed the loser because that's Donald Trump. He backed Strange. This is more on Mitch McConnell than it is on Donald Trump in terms of the mud in the face here. Donald Trump, when he was down in Huntsville for a rally last week, even said, maybe I made a mistake here when he saw the lack of enthusiasm he said it out loud on an open mic, when he saw the lack of enthusiasm for Luther Strange. He also has no idea who either of these two people are.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And Luther Strange, this is what presidents do. Sometimes they do actually back people who they're not crazy about in primaries because that senator or that congressperson has been supportive of their agenda.
But let's not. I think what no one is saying, which every GOP serious, if there are any left, every serious GOP operative and officer of the party, lack of a better term, and there are definitely better terms. Roy Moore is a lunatic whose association with the GOP hurts the GOP brand, and they were afraid of that. Luther Strange's greatest claim to fame, other than having as badass a name as any US senator has ever had, was that he wasn't Roy Moore.
Well, actually, his biggest claim to fame is that he will forever still be the tallest man to ever serve in the US Senate.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's like 6'8".
He's now the tallest man in Congress, but he's this 6'9", the tallest man to ever serve in the Senate.
Yeah, so it was all about preventing Roy Moore, and I imagine what happened with Trump was that he was convinced that Roy Moore was, a dangerous guy, which I know we'll be getting to, and a guy who will be easy to bludgeon the entire GOP brand with because of his outrageous attitudes and the nature of the game and the fact that they're going to inevitably embrace him. So Ward Baker and Nick Ayers and all these people, yeah. I don't think everyone told people other than guys like Steve Bannon that the horse to back was Luther Strange, and we should do all we can to stop Roy Moore from winning the seat, and they failed, so now they're embracing Moore.
And what Anna read too is really important in the dynamic of who Donald Trump is, which is the fact that Steve Bannon backed Roy Moore and Steve Bannon, who's no longer in his White House, won, is the thing that ticks him off the most.
Yes, absolutely, it does tick him off the most. And The reason why I bring up the potential political ramifications for Trump backing the so-called loser candidate is because it goes further than him backing someone who lost. The way that it's playing out in the press, especially right-wing media, is that Donald Trump supported and endorsed the so-called establishment candidate against the outsider, which further reinforces this narrative that's playing out in conservative media that Trump conned his voters and isn't actually an outsider. It's funny to hear that because you do hear from his base that seems to support him no matter what he does. However, people are now starting to turn on him because of the lack of legislative wins, and I put myself through conservative talk radio on a daily basis because I'm curious to see how the opinion toward Trump is changing. And some of his biggest backers, including Mark Levin, are now saying, oh, he lied to us, he's making deals with the Democrats, he's actually pro-establishment, he's not looking out for us. And so for those who are already starting to draw that narrative, this is not going to look good. This is going to further feed, what they're starting to believe and what they're starting to put
I hear you,
there.
and you look, we all hear different things. And it's interesting that you heard that on talk radio. Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity and Steve Bannon all were giving him instant cover while saying he broke, he's getting some bad advice. He's still our guy, and you see Trump embracing that narrative too. It took him you had that tweet, right?
Yeah.
That he tweeted right after the primary win for Roy Moore.
So right after the primary win for Roy Moore, Donald Trump did tweet in support of Moore. However, I do want to quickly go through his deleted tweets that endorsed Luther Strange. So let's go to graphic 4. Now in the first tweet, he said, "Alabama, get out there and vote for Luther Strange. He has proven to me that he will never let you down. #MAGA." Okay. By the way, his tweets further, prove your point, Michael, that he has no idea who these people are.
You've never heard of Roy Moore, which is impossible to believe if you are even remotely interested in politics in America. Or I should say, if you're remotely, it's understandable. If you're the president, it's hard to believe.
I'd like us to start pronouncing MAGA differently in ways.
MAGA?
Or just like MAGA,
Yeah.
like just something that #MAGA.
Or a soft G like GIF, like Maja.
Maja. Come on, get behind
That's basically
fine,
what
I'll
he
do it.
does.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at another deleted tweet. He also said that Luther Strange has been shooting up in the Alabama polls since my endorsement. Finish the job, vote for Big Luther.
That's one of my favorite Trump tweets ever because one, no, he hasn't.
Exactly, exactly.
He's been on the decline.
He's been on the pretty steady decline, and his endorsement came some time ago. So that's just flat out untrue. But it did contain the phrase "Big Luther," which I enjoyed enormously. Just that in a tweet, and it's true. He's big and he's Luther.
Well, he's also, and people think that this is one of Trump's nicknames, like Little Marco. Big Luther Strange has been called Big Luther his entire life throughout politics. Everywhere he goes, he had Big Luther up in his office. So it's it's not a Trumpism.
But of course, not only the great, so that tweet was wrong on the facts, as always, that no, actually, since your endorsement, really made no difference. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
Roy Moore is a political force to some extent in Alabama and was one of the most famous people in Alabama.
He won
politics.
63 of 67 counties last night.
Yeah, so
Wow.
now again, remember there are no Democrats voting here. And then it just says
in December he'll win 63 of 67.
And then the other part, now finish the job, they didn't. So it's a great Trump tweet that's now gone.
That's now deleted. And then the final deleted tweet says the following: "Big election tomorrow in the great state of Alabama. Vote for Senator Luther Strange. Tough on crime and border. Will never let you down." Now,
tough on border.
Tough on border, right? Okay, what? Okay, so that again has since been deleted. And then following the election results, Trump tweeted in support of Roy Moore and said the following: "Spoke to Roy Moore of Alabama last night for the first time. Sounds like a really great guy who ran a fantastic race. He will help to Maya." So
make Japan great again.
Yeah, so it's a great story. I think, and Michael will speak to this with far more authority than either of us. But look, it was the one outcome that gives Democrats some sliver of hope.
Yeah. Really? But that's not my read of this at all.
Well, but Roy Moore is while very well known, is also enormously unpopular, and there are plenty of mainstream Republicans who hate this guy, who are trying to, have Alabama break its from the stereotype that it's a backwards, thoughtless state about a number of issues, and Roy Moore's fight for enormously unpopular and unconstitutional things, and his open defiance of the law did not sit well with a number of people in Alabama. So the thought is that, and now here's the Democrat running in the race is a prosecutor, is a guy who's literally tough on crime.
Yeah,
Doug Jones.
Yeah, let me tell you, let me take 20 seconds on Doug Jones, who I happen to know, and he is an amazing guy. He was the former U.S. attorney there in Alabama, and he in the late 90s, he was appointed by Clinton, so he was in the 90s there. He was appointed by Clinton. He spent the first thing he did when he became.
Well, he was a federal prosecutor before that.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he'd been in Alabama, AG, and all that. But the U.S. attorney's office was during Clinton. The first thing he did was reopened the case of the Birmingham church bombing from 1963, where 4 girls were killed in a church in Birmingham, and he brought to justice, prosecuted 35 years later, the perpetrators of that crime. He had not thought about seeking public office in this way because Alabama is Alabama. No matter how good you are at politics, if you're a Democrat, the odds are stacked against you. What he is able to do now, because he is such a fine person, is to get a lot of constituencies to come out and vote who otherwise would not have. Had Luther Strange won, you have an independent voter who's much more likely to vote for an establishment Republican there. I hate saying establishment, just a Republican there, because they're all the same to me. I mean, Luther.
But Roy Moore brings brings baggage that Luther Strange.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so there are people that will come out to vote against Roy Moore that would not have come out to vote against Luther Strange. That could help.
I guess what I'm worried about is, if there are moderate Republicans in Alabama who are just patently against someone like Roy Moore, how did he get elected? And also, I'm concerned because I don't want to draw too many parallels between what's happening in Alabama to what happened during the general election. But this is the same line of thinking that I think Democrats had. That the deplorable person just got chosen by the Republicans in the state in the primaries, and luckily the Democrat isn't insane.
That's a fair fear to have, but you have to go into America is different than Alabama. Alabama's its own place, and Alabama for a Democrat there hasn't been a Democrat elected to statewide office there in 10 years. The last senator elected as a Democrat was in 1992, and now he's a Republican.
That's Richard Shelby. And he's a conservative Republican.
Yeah, he's a conservative.
Yeah.
So don't things look bad for the
no matter who wins?
Yeah, things for Doug Jones look terrible.
Okay.
And in fact, there was almost no chance of him winning, and now there's,
a tiny sliver of a chance.
I read today that a Democrat, basically in a standard race, but Roy Moore, as we're about to go through, is not a standard candidate, and Doug Jones has a particularly impressive resume, as Michael mentioned. So, but in a statewide election in Alabama, a Democrat generally gets between 16 and 17% of the white vote. So, and to win, you probably need 35% of the white vote. So Doug Jones would need big turnout from black voters, which he might get. Again, it's not it's an off-year election. It's in December.
December 12th. These are
bad dates. I mean, my anniversary, making it a great date, but otherwise a bad date. And so these are bad dates, but so he would need significant black turnout, and he would need to double the white vote. And again, I would say that this was a pointless exercise. If Luther Strange had won, we wouldn't be sitting at the table talking about it.
Right.
So it went from a 1% chance to a 6% chance, but that's a 6 times better chance.
Support independent media. Come join us at the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.